Hello everyone, good morning and welcome to today's The Hindu News Analysis. Myself Nitin Kbiju, I'll be appearing for the civil service interview this year. In today's news analysis, we'll be discussing about 5 important news articles in the Hindu newspaper today. Before moving to the main articles, we'll go to the coronavirus related news. India's virus tally crosses 1 lakh. Fatality count mounts to 3,157. Out of the 5,079 new cases recorded in the last 24 hours, Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, and Gujarat report most of the cases. Also, there is a statistics which is given here which says that the average, when we consider the daily average new cases from between May 11th to May 17th, India ranks fourth among the nations in the world with 4,077 average cases in the last 6 days. It is just behind US, Brazil, and Russia. So it is a very bad situation as of now, and the doubling time has reduced to 13.5 from 14 in the previous days, right? Also, another good news is that India currently is increasing its recovery rate with presently a recovery rate of around 38.29 percentage. So also another news related to COVID-19 is that the Oxford vaccine fails to shield monkeys from virus. So this was a much which was a vaccine which made so much promise, like everyone were expecting more from it, but it failed to shield the monkeys from the virus, but it provides protection from pneumonia, and the tests are likely to continue. Now, coming to the news article of the day, here we have written P because it is important for prelims. So, Odisha, West Bengal brace for Amphan. The storm system in the Bay of Bengal, Amphan, developed into a super cyclone on Monday and is expected to make landfall along the West Bengal Bangladesh coast on Wednesday. Currently, Amphan is located about 730 kilometers south of Paradeep in Odisha. So, it is expected to uh, reach the coast on Wednesday, right? So, by the time it makes landfall in West Bengal, Amphan is expected to tone down into a Category 4 extremely severe cyclonic storm with wind speed of 165 to 175 km per hour and gusting to 195 km per hour. So this is they are mentioning about the category of the cyclones. So here for prelims related fact, we have to additionally see how these cyclones are named. So the naming of the cyclone becomes very important for prelims. So go through the prelims related fact of how it is named and which country named Amphan. So these aspects should be gone through. Okay. Now, coming to the other news, coming to the editorial of the day, a matter of relief. The strategy of promoting supply without helping boost demand may force a relook later. So, this will come under GS3. GS3 in economy, as well as it is important for interview purposes. So, with the announcement of the final tranche of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, the COVID-19 relief package, a pattern to the government approach is visible. So what is this pattern? The pattern is that the government's approach gives a strong supply side push by boosting availability of capital on easy terms, keep wage income and wage support schemes to the minimum, empower constituencies ranging from farmers and workers to businesses, and finally the most important, keep the damage to the fiscal as low as possible. So here we will see what individually these things means. Like what is this strong supply side push by boosting cap availability of capital. Here they are mentioning about the credit guarantee schemes which are being given to the MSMEs and all, right? MSMEs, other businesses, NBFCs, etc. So this is called supply side push. So supply side push focuses on the businesses, right, to improve the produces, whereas demand side push focuses on the consumers, whereby the purchasing power of the consumers will be increasing. So we have seen that the demand side push is not given much importance in this fiscal in this stimulus, whereas the supply side is given more support in this final tranche of the Atmanirbhar Bharat Abhiyan, right? Also, keep income and wage support schemes to the minimum. So here they are. The article editorial is mentioning about the labor relaxations which are promulgated by various state governments. For example, UP and all has promulgated ordinances, right? Similarly, states like MP, Gujarat, and are also trying to reduce their relax their labor laws for 1,000 days or so. So this is what they are telling about keeping income and wage support schemes to the minimum. Also, empowering constituencies ranging from farmers and workers to businesses. So here they are mentioning about the 1 lakh crore infrastructure support given to farm gate infrastructure, right? Also to workers, to businesses, these are talking about the MSME credit guarantee schemes. And finally, the most important, keep the damage to the fisc as low as possible. Even though the government has told that 20 lakh crore comes to around 10% of the GDP, but we know that it includes the RBI, the liquidity measures which are taken by the RBI also in the previous months. For example, February, March, April. So it includes RBI's efforts also. Even it includes the previous effort by the government, that is 1.76 lakh crore of stimulus, the first wave of stimulus, right? So it includes that also. Also, a majority of this 20 lakh crore is actually credit guarantees. So credit guarantees means the banks will be able to banks should be giving credit to the people. Okay, for example, MSMEs. Okay, banks will be giving around 3 lakh crore credit to MSMEs. Only if the MSMEs default on that, then the government have to pay it later. So this is not an immediate relief measure, right? It comes like only if the MSMEs default on their loans, then the credit guarantee given by the government comes into picture only, and in that case only the government have to spend the money, right? So uh, that is not an immediate expenditure, right? So the package is estimated by economists as around 2 to 3% of the GDP, though it is said to be 10% of the GDP. The actual fiscal stimulus, the spending, the immediate spending of the government comes to only around 2 to 3% of the GDP. So the pillar on which the package rests is liquidity support, so that businesses can crank up again and set the economic cycle back in motion. The option of demand side stimulus seems to be reserved for a future date. That is, demand side stimulus is not given as of now. The problem with this approach is that there is a desperate need for demand stimulus now. A strategy to drive consumption by, say, suspending GST for a couple of months or at least cutting the rates temporarily combined with liquidity boost may have worked better under the prevailing conditions. So here the editorial is telling that there should have been some more demand side measures, consumption boosting measures along with the supply side measures also. So and the ensuing consumption boost could bring revenues to compensate for the cut. So if the demand side measures were given, if the consumption boost was given, then that consumption boost could have brought in revenues, okay, for what the government is losing now. The government has done well in increasing the budget for Manrega by two-thirds, adding another 40,000 crore. Here we can see that this is a consumption side measure. This is a demand side measure, right? By giving money directly to the people, like through Manrega, right? So this is a demand side measure. With migrants now returning to their villages, Manrega can be leveraged to keep them occupied with meaningful work. The demand of the states for higher borrowing limits has been guaranteed, but with reform milestones that they have to meet. So here the government, the central government has allowed the state governments to increase their borrowing from 3% through to till 5%. That is, the fiscal deficit can be 5% now. That means that implies that the state governments can borrow more money to the extent of 2% of their GSDP. So that is a huge relief for the states. The government has also used the opportunity to unleash some much needed reforms in agriculture marketing, open up more sectors for the private participation. For example, private participation in coal sector, in space sector by using ISRO facilities, and even in the defense sector under non-strategic defense sector, right? So enhance foreign direct investment in defense, corporatize the monolith ordnance factory board, and so on. In some, the package has several notable features, not all of which are COVID relief. So this is a criticism against the package, because uh, the package was supposed to be a relief for COVID-19, but instead the government has focused more on reforms. Reforms could have been done at any time, right? So even after the COVID-19 gets over, the reforms could have been done. So reforms will come into picture, its benefit will come into picture only in the long term. But presently the need was for relief, which was very important in the short term, right? So the government has taken a huge gamble by refusing to borrow and spent more on boosting demand. If the strategy of boosting supply works, it is fine. If the strategy, that is supply side measures, if it works, then it is fine. But if it does not work, the government will be faced with a bigger problem down the line. So the best thing was to give a mix of demand measures as well as supply measures, but the government has focused heavily on supply side measures. So that is what the criticism of the government stimulus is. Now, coming to the next article, a jolt to national energy security. So this article is very much technical, going very much technical into the electricity power related aspects. But here we'll focus only on the prelims related stuffs. Okay, we'll see what all are important for prelims in this articles. So the news is about the recent comprehensive proposal to amend the Electricity Act of 2003. So here, one prelims related fact is electricity comes under concurrent status. So we know that the legislative powers are divided into union list, concurrent list, as well as state list. With union government having power over the union list, state government having power over the state list, and in under concurrent list, both the center and the state can make legislations, right? So electricity comes under the concurrent list, under the various lists, right? So here we'll be discussing about various amendments which are proposed. Okay, other than that, we don't have to go much into detail about it because it's more technical and it's not necessary for a general studies paper. So against this backdrop, that we must examine the proposals in the Electricity Act 2020, that is the amended act. So the various just remember these provisions in the new amendments, that is sufficient. The first, the amendment proposes sub franchisees, presumably private, in an attempt to usher in markets through the back door. So here just focus on the term sub franchises. And coming to the second proposal, the amendment proposes even greater concessions to renewable power developers. So that is the second provision, more support to renewable power developers. Third, and the most controversial amendment proposed, seeks to eliminate in one stroke the cross subsidies in retail power tariffs. So here the main point is that elimination of cross subsidies. So here we have to know what cross subsidies are. So cross subsidies means it is a type of subsidy where the consumers are divided into two categories. One category will be paying higher prices for the product, and this higher prices paid by one type of consumers, that profit, no, it'll be that profit will be used to subsidize the other group of customers. So that is called cross subsidies. You please go about this concept about cross subsidies, understand what it is. For I can explain it in a simple manner. For example, in the case of electricity, consider like one electricity is okay, assume one unit of electricity is around 10 rupees. So normally what we have to do, every customer should be given charged with 10 rupees, right, per unit. But what happens in cross subsidies is, like, the customers are divided into two. One is big businesses and the other one is like normal households. So the big businesses will be made to charge more. For example, instead of 10 rupees, they'll be charged 15 rupees. So they will be getting 5 rupees of profit there, right? So that 5 rupees will be given to the normal households, the subsidized to the normal households. So in the households, instead of paying 10 rupees, the households will be paying only 5 rupees. So the businesses are charged more in order to give subsidies to the households. So this is a simple example of a cross subsidy. I hope you understood this. Now, coming to the fourth proposal, the state regulators will henceforth be appointed by the Central Selection Committee. So here you can say that the involvement of the central government is increasing. So that will be resisted by the states, right? The state will become more dependent on the center. Also, finally, the last clause in this multi-pronged pincer is the establishment of a centralized electricity contract enforcement authority. So here also you can see another centralized act, centralization, right? So electricity contract enforcement authority, and it has the power to adjudicate on the disputes. Earlier, who used to adjudicate the disputes? Earlier, the disputes were adjudicated by the state electricity regulatory commissions. So here you can say that the power of adjudication is also taken from the states to the center, and it is more centralized. So here, in short, you can see that uh, one is if we consider, if we revise all the provisions, one is sub franchises, one comes to cross subsidies, the other one is more of centralization in terms of adjudication, as well as the centralization in terms of appointment to the state regulators, right? So, and even increase support to the renewable energy developers. So these are the important provisions of this Electricity Amendment Act of 2020. So just learn this for the prelims perspective. Now, coming to the next article, preparing for a syndemic. So this is a new term which we are hearing, right? So we might have heard about endemic, we might have heard what pandemic is. Now, what is the syndemic? So this is also from the perspective of prelims. You just need to know what a syndemic is. Okay, so before moving to that, let's revise what endemic and pandemic is. So when the covid-19 was only limited to China, it was said to be an endemic, right? The disease was said to be an endemic. But when it started spreading throughout the world, the World Health Organization classified it as a pandemic. So what are this criteria for a disease, for an endemic to become a pandemic? One is that it should be global in reach. The geographical extent should be global, right? So as we know, the covid-19 is a pandemic because it has huge global reach. Also, the disease should be infectious also. For example, if we consider the case of cancer, cancer is also spread throughout the world, right? In almost all the countries, people are suffering from cancer, but it is not a pandemic. Why? Because it is not infectious. So the two criteria for a disease to become a pandemic is, one is global reach, as well as the second is it should be infectious. Now, how a pandemic will become a syndemic, we'll be going through that in the coming article. The World Health Organization has announced that COVID-19 will likely never go away. Experts warn that there will be a second wave of infections. Meanwhile, some people have also raised alarm about diseases like dengue and malaria emerging with the upcoming monsoon season. So monsoon season is coming in June, July and all, right? So more diseases, tropical diseases like dengue, malaria, etc. will be coming. Therefore, going forward, could COVID-19 become even more problematic by becoming a syndemic? So what is a syndemic? A syndemic is a situation where two or more epidemics interact synergistically to produce a increased burden of disease in the population. So for example, if dengue, which is already an epidemic, and coming to covid-19, which is already a pandemic, if these two come together, if these two epidemics come together, then it will become, this will be called as a syndemic, right? So two or more epidemics coming together, right? So there is a chance that it can happen if covid-19 doesn't go away. So other examples are like viral bacterial syndemics are there. For example, COVID-19 is a viral disease. Now, if the population is so already the immunity of the population has come down, right? Now they are more susceptible to bacterial infections also. There is a chance of viral bacterial syndemic. Similarly, malaria HIV syndemic is also there. So that is also another example of syndemic. So now, coming to with India's ongoing migrant crisis, we cannot rule out the COVID-19 becoming syndemic given the large scale urban to rural chaotic migration. Right. Added to this is the complexity of the upcoming dengue and malaria season. So here you just have to know what a syndemic is. So if the statement comes in the prelims, you should be able to identify correctly what a syndemic is and the examples of it. That's it. Now, coming to the last article. So here, this article is the US, United States, and China entering a new Cold War. So here, this is important under GS2, under international relations, as well as for interview purposes. The relation between US and China and its impact on India can be asked in the interview. So, coming to the article, relations between the US and China have plunged to another in the recent weeks. Another means the law. It's a law. The On May 15th, President Donald Trump threatened to cut off the whole relationship with the China over the COVID-19 pandemic. He has earlier called the coronavirus a Chinese virus and even threatened to seek compensation from China for the damages caused by the outbreak. Also, China sometimes through the state-run media has hit back, calling Trump's recent statements as lunacy. Right. So this kind of word, like war between the words, is going on between U.S. and China. The rising tensions between the two superpowers have prompted many experts to warn of a new Cold War. So earlier the Cold War was between the United States and the Soviet Union, right? So now there is a chance of a Cold War between the US and China. Relations between the two countries had started deteriorating well before the COVID-19 pandemic. We have seen that. We know that like there was a lot of trade problems. Like there was an ongoing trade war, and even the maritime front in the East and South China Seas, there were issues between US and China. Also, and the latest addition is the mutual mudslinging on the COVID-19 related issues, right? So the situation is the present situation is unlikely to ease until the US presidential election. So till that time, we can expect Trump to just tell against China, keeping on telling against China. One is for his election benefit also, right? So post elections, the temperatures could decrease, but a deep-rooted antipathy towards China has gripped the popular and political imagination in the US. So not just the government, but the people are also having a feeling against the China, right? Therefore, the tensions will not go away. So there are already similarities between the current crisis and the Cold War, which happened between the US and the Soviet Union. That is, the political elites of both China and the US, like the Soviet Union and the US back then, see each other as their main rivals. We can also see this antagonism moving from the political elite to the popular perception. So it is not just in the political elite, that is the rulers, that this conflict is visible, but in the people also, in the people or general population also, this antagonism is visible, right? So this is a similarity which happened during the past Cold War. But there are main differences as well. So what are the differences? We don't see the kind of proxy conflicts between the US and China which we did during the Cold War. So what were these proxy conflicts? Like proxy conflicts means no direct confrontation. For example, US and Soviet Union won't be fighting against each other directly, but through proxies. For example, Cuba was a proxy, as we can see from the Cuban Missile Crisis. Similarly, Vietnam War was there. Also, Korean was there, right? So these kind of proxy wars used to happen between US and Soviet Union during that Cold War era. But as of now, there is no proxy war which is happening. Also, the world is not bipolar anymore. That time the world was bipolar. That US and Soviet Union emerged as the main powers after the Second World War, right? But as of now, there is no it is not a bipolar world. There are third parties such as European Union, Russia, India, and Japan. These parties increasingly have a choice whether or not to align with either power as they see fit and on a case by case basis. This leads to a very different kind of international order than during the Cold War, right? So also, if Donald Trump get re-elected, then the ideological underpinnings of the US China rivalry could get further solidified. So how far the tensions will go, it mainly depends on the United States election, general election, which is presidential election, which is supposed to be conducted in the November this year, right? So we have to wait for that to see the future between US China relations. So that's all for today's Hindu news analysis. I hope you understood the concepts. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, as well as share the video with your friends. Have a great day. Thank you.